a lot of concern has surfaced about whether or not the Philadelphia Eagles offensively are going to be able to hang with some of the better competition when we get late into the playoffs or hopefully into the Super Bowl. So I'm going to take a deep dive because I think the culprit is pretty obvious to what is kind of inciting these fears in everyone, which is the slow starts offensively. We could talk about the first quarter in general. We have picked it up over the last couple of weeks in terms of actually getting points in the first quarter. But I think what everyone's specifically pointing to is the fact that on opening possessions, especially those possessions where we do not get the ball to start the second half. So we are leading off with the football for the game. The lack of productivity, right? I mean, we struggled to even get a field goal last week, even though we moved the ball pretty solidly. And I think that's where we should start. Let's go ahead and let's jump right into this, guys. Let's get into the second play of the football game. And what I want to show you here is that the Philadelphia Eagles are coming out in 12 personnel. To me, this looks like some form of quarters coverage that the Washington Commanders are playing behind it. Basically, you're splitting up quarters in terms of like the way you're going to divide up your field. In terms of how they're matching and playing zone or man match, it's hard to tell from this, guys, if they're just dropping the spots. So if they're spot dropping, it's a little difficult to tell off of just a single play. I kind of need to see Washington over several plays to get a feel for how they actually play their responsibilities. Some of that is knowing where their landing marks are, guys. I just don't know enough to adequately judge the landing marks to tell you man match, zone match, spot drops, all that kind of stuff with their personnel. The Eagles are coming out in a 2x2 stack out of that 12 personnel. If you look to one side, you'll see you have receivers to one side. If you look to the opposite side, you have tight ends. Those tight ends are in line and then winged. And then you can see the running back is actually offset towards the tight end side of the formation here. Jalen Hurts is in shotgun. And early on, or initially, I should say, A.J. Brown he's in tight. He's dang near winged with how tight he is to formation. And then they're going to run a little basically out motion with him. So they're going to motion him outward just to kind of give a little bit of a wrinkle, a little bit of a look to the defense. This concept, guys, is very much inside of the West Coast. And then collegiately, what you will see this run a lot is those air raid offenses. These are mostly these hitches, kind of these real fast timing, quick out plays that you see kind of run in the league from the West Coast offenses and also at the college level when it comes to the air raid offenses. If you guys are wondering, it does seem like the West Coast, teams do tend to favor these kind of like air raid type quarterbacks, right? The Pat Mahomes of the world, the Kyler Murrays of the world, who coming primarily out of that. They mix in some zone read stuff, guys, and they mix in some spread concepts as well. But you get my point about like kind of how there does seem to be a favor towards those with the, kind of West Coast minded offenses right now. There does seem to be a leaning towards that. Not that it's apples for apples and that applies for every single situation league-wide, but there's somewhat of a trend going on there. All right, let's get into this play and let's talk a little bit about what the Eagles did and what I think they could do going forward to potentially make this a little bit more better of a play here, if you will, a little bit more higher chance of success rate. I don't love the spacing on this play, if I'm being honest, okay? And this is not taking a shot at Kellen Moore. We need to keep in mind, Kellen Moore moved the ball on this drive. This was not a failure of Kellen Moore. This is just nitpicking how things come apart for the Eagles sometimes. Literally, Jalen Hurts only threw 10 incompletions on the game. And on the first possession, I'm going to give you 2 of those incompletions. That's literally 20% of all the balls he missed in this game. We got to let that sink in, guys. There's got to be a little bit of reality, right? We got to attach ourselves and ground ourselves to something that's reality-based here. So we got to keep all this kind of stuff in mind, right? A little grain of salt, if you will. All right. When you look at this, look at your 2 tight ends. They're going to both kind of like hitch up, kind of run curls type things. You got one guy who's hitching, another guy I think is really more so along what we'd call like kind of the curl route there. And then you have a flat route. I don't know if these are half-field reads per se. Normally when you're getting into the West Coast offense stuff, that's more of a spread concept. The half-field read stuff is. West Coast, the coordinators like to have some power, guys. The coordinators like to have that first initial read very well defined for you. I would put this in a similar family. It's not a Y stick, but it's in a similar family to the wide stick, that Y stick route. Now the difference is when you run a Y stick route, essentially what you have here is a stick route. You have the Y stick, and then you have a vertical concept, okay? So you have like that kind of curl route, you have a vertical concept, and then you normally have something going to the flats, right? It's a layered and leveled offense, and of course, the Y is the primary read, and then based upon what the defense does, you're essentially high-lowing them, if you will, in terms of levels and how you're playing it. And I do think that if someone had gone up the seams on this play, had challenged the seams, I think the spacing would have been better. But instead, they kind of run this double, kind of like I said, you got kind of like a stick route or a nod route. Then you have like kind of a curl route on the other side. Like, they're definitely built for timing. This is definitely in the concept of West Coast offenses, and your footwork certainly matters here. Like, you're talking about pretty much a one-step hitch and then get the ball out, but the spacing's not right. So when Jalen kind of sees it, he's like, oh, it's not there. You can make an argument that if he really came off of that fast, guys, and I'm talking about you got to be really comfortable in the offense to come off of this read as fast as it would need to be done to get the ball to Saquon here. But if you are really familiar, if you're really comfortable in the system, and you know right away, like, oh man, the cover, it's the coverage is right there. This ain't going to be right. Basically, before you even hit this, that Y stick, before they even get to the top of their route stem to stem it off. If Jalen is that comfortable in the system, he can see it. You can make a case that he could quickly go to the flats on that one and maybe have a shot at a first down there. But I will say, if you're late on that throw, you're probably going to get picked. So it's probably a good idea there, guys, that he kind of puts the ball where it's not going to be picked. So, I mean, in that play, it's kind of like with time, could you progress it? Sure. What is this, though, conceptually? And we've had these discussions, guys, where I've told you guys about Coryell. I've told you guys about the Erhardt-Perkins system. And then, like, we've talked about things like the West Coast offense. And I'm going to give you just a little rundown of the way that these languages, sound, because there is a linguistic part, right? There are certain specific languages to play calls and play sheets. And then there's the actual concept and the designs, which are not really that different from each other. But there are some things there. But then there's the other side of things past the language and the actual route designs, where now you're getting into landmarks. You're getting into this guy's supposed to be 2 yards off the tackle. This guy's supposed to be 4 yards off. This guy, there's different things, guys. There's these little kind of like tweaks that have to be made when you talk about installing different systems. So if you look at the West Coast, I'm going to give you one of the staples. I don't know. I can't remember if this is a Paul Brown and the Cincinnati stuff that went on there, if this was essentially, those guys like George Seifert and Bill Walsh and the 49ers taking this concept, or if it falls into the Holmgren. But I do know this is an easily Googleable search term for you guys, to where you can easily see this broken down for you. This is a very, very common call inside of the West Coast offense, and it's fullback west right slot 3-7-2 Y stick. All right, fullback west right is a very specific designation here, okay? First thing it tells you is that you're probably going to have a quarterback under center, or you're going to have like kind of a pro set where the quarterback's in shotgun if he's in shotgun. But in this particular situation, the way that this is structured from the play call is that your fullback is aligned to the right of the tight end, and he's 1 yard back or behind of the tight end. So it's almost kind of like a winged position, if you will. All right, now let's talk about what they mean by slot. Why do they even designate slot? Well, they designate the slot because, naturally speaking, the slot would be on the same side of the field to where you would have your flanker, right? You would have what in Madden, if you're looking at Madden, guys, it's the Z receiver in Madden. But in the NFL, they're called flankers, all right? He's that movement-based tight end. Sometimes they are on the line of scrimmage. Most of the time, they're used to be in movement, if you will. Okay, if you put slot specifically in the play sheet, in the play call, that's telling you that's not where he's lined up this time. This time, he's on the opposite side of the field, and he's lined up between essentially on this play would be your left tackle and then basically your split end X, boundary side aligned wide receiver, okay? So it's specific to tell you that. Then you have this number-based stuff where it's 3-7-2, guys, and that 3-7-2 is basically telling you the footwork and is telling you the protection for the quarterback here. So three-step drop, guys. That's what the 3 means. 7-2, that means the running back. Well, you got to go back to the 7 and the 2, but the 7 means the running back has a blocking assignment. It is designating what his blocking assignment is before he either releases out for a route, if he stays in for like a 6-man protection, basically, or something like that. 7-man protection. The 2 is the overall protection, and it's just basically kind of like, it depends upon the system, guys, in terms of if it's a man straight up, if they're sliding, if it's a 2-man slide. It can vary by the actual system. I don't know this system well enough to tell you exactly what the slide is there. That's probably something that would be better for if Jalen Williams is in the comment and if he's familiar with this particular play call. My guy Caleb Brennan, used to be a center, played for Charleston Southern. Those guys will probably give you a better idea of what the 2 means if they have experience playing within that West Coast system. That's the thing is I'd never personally played in the West Coast system. So it's hard to know that protection call exactly. Y stick is the route concept. So when you hear something like fullback west right, slot 3-7-2 Y stick, that's the play call, right? That's the stuff I was telling you early on in the season. When you hear something like that, that can cause some communication barriers, right? That can cause you to be kind of late getting out of the huddle. That can cause you to be really up against the clock in terms of delay of games and like have really getting deep into the clock in terms of when you snap the ball. That was some of the things we were seeing earlier on, and I do think that there is an adjustment period here, guys. To some extent, if the language has been switched, and I don't know that. I do know that Kellen has roots in the West Coast offense, that West Coast spread, kind of Andy Reid-ish type stuff. He didn't coach for Andy Reid, but that's where he's comfortable with it. Now, I want you to compare that to the linguistic groups of something like an Erhardt-Perkins play call, okay? I'm going to give you one of the most common Erhardt-Perkins play call. This is Tom Brady in New England. This is a very common one. This is another one that you can essentially Google and find really quickly because this is a very common play call here. All right, Erhardt-Perkins play call would be something along the lines of like an F right 72 ghost tosser. So let's go over this a little bit. What we mean by F right, we're talking about the formation, right? It's a very short and sweet. In this particular New England system, when they went F right, that basically meant it was a 2x2 stack was the actual formation with the F to the right side of formation, okay? 2x2 stack with your F receiver on the right-hand side of the formation. So F right, and then you get to the 72, right? So F right 72 ghost tosser. So the 72 should tell you that's your protection. When you're in the 70s, so there's different variations between 50s, 60s, 70s in terms of the way you're setting your protection. When you're in the 70s, number one, you're in a 5-step drop. So this is under center more than likely. You are very rarely going to take a 5-step drop out of shotgun, guys. So when you hear 7 in the first part of the numbers, it could be 72, it could be 73, guys. You're talking about a 5-step, my bad, guys, drop. All right. It's a full slide. In this particular situation, it's a full slide to the right. It's a full slide to the weak side. Okay, so which should be formationally to the right. This is a little different from, because I did kind of come up in the Erhardt-Perkins type system, guys, myself. You can see how short and sweet these play calls are for Erhardt-Perkins. We use different language than they did in terms to indicate a full slide. So, like, it's a little different here when they say 72 because that wouldn't have meant a full slide for us. But, every system's going to be a little different, guys. And then the concept that they're running is called ghost and tosser. So, basically, what I told you guys about the Erhardt-Perkins system is it's very quarterback-driven, and it's also got a lot to do with option routes, and that's where you're going to definitely see quarterbacks who will take a split field read, but it starts full field, and then based upon what they're seeing from the coverage and things, they're going to zone in on which side of the field they want to attack with that split field read. So you have two concepts here. One side of the field, you're running something called ghost. Ghost it's in the name, guys. If you listen to it close enough, it's a go route and an out route of some sort. That's ghost. There's going to be a go route and an out route, and then something's probably going to release into the flats with a ghost formation. Okay? Normally, you got like a 10 to 12 yard out on the out route. So when you talk about tosser, my bad, toaster. When you talk about tosser is basically running double slants. So on one side of the field, you're running that go route, that out route with probably something releasing into the flats. And the other side of the field, you're running basically double slants, okay? But the play call, listen to the play call one more time, and you can see how short and sweet it is compared to the West Coast stuff. F right 72 ghost tosser. That's pretty easy to remember, guys. All right, let's get into the Coryell, which is the third large language-based stuff. This is the digit-based stuff. This is the things that you hear when you hear, a 7 route or a 9 route or an 8 route or a 1 route or 2 route. That's coming out of the language from the Coryell type stuff. So this is a digit-based system in particular, and you'll hear things from them that'll sound something like this, all right? Twins right motion, scat right, 5-2-5, F post, swing. That's a lot, right? It's a lot of language there. You can see the clear difference between the Coryell compared to the Erhardt-Perkins compared to the West Coast and like linguistically the way things sound between these systems, all right? So let me break this down for you a little bit, man. Twins right motion, twins, and then on the right side, it's going to be to the right side, and you're going to bring motion in to create the twins. That's what that means, guys. All right, scat right is the protection, all right? They're using a 5-man slide. So they're doing a 5-man slide to the right, scat right. We used, once again, guys, when I was working within these type of systems, we would use a different word because scat to us would normally be something like 3 scat or 2 scat, which would mean like a 3-man slide, a 2-man slide, things like that. Normally, we would use a different terminology to mean 5-man slide on that one. But it's interesting to see when they don't designate a number before it, it's a full man slide in terms of this particular concept. 5-2-5 is your route designation, guys. You got 2 out routes and you got kind of like a slant built in there. So you got 2 outs and a slant. 5-2-5. And then you're designating what you do with your, say you got a fullback back there and a running back, or say you got a, let's say you got like one of, like an H-back. An H-back type meaning like kind of like back in the day what the Eagles would do with some of their tight ends, like how they would play that kind of weird in-between role between a tight end and fullback kind of, right? You're designating what their routes are, the running back, the tight end, or H-back, or fullback, or, whatever, right? You're designating what you want them to do. So one of them is going to run an F post. So that's normally going to be like that kind of that swing type player. He's going to run a post there, and the other guy's going to block and then release off the block for a swing route, okay? So that's what they mean by F post swing. They're designating what those 2 guys do outside of protection. So you got twins right motion, scat right, 5-2-5, F post swing. That's Air Coryell. Scheme, guys. I would love to be able to get this system in place for a couple of years, just because it would be fascinating to see, once there's a certain level of comfortability built into the system, how well Jalen Hurts kind of performs in that said system. And the last play I want to bring you to is an 11-man personnel situation in the game here, right? And one of the plays you see here is like, number one, the first thing is going to be 11-man personnel. What you're going to look out there in the field, you're going to see is they're going from 12-man to now 11-man personnel. You're always going to have motion with this offense. There's always going to be a ton of motion here. But the concept is a little confusing because this is just a play that it was drawn up, but it wasn't available. And they burnt Washington on a very similar play last year with Goddard like this. They're trying to sell them. Last year, I think they were trying to sell them more on like a bubble screen. This time, they're trying to sell them kind of like on this motion across the field into like kind of a bubble or a tunnel screen type action. But really what they're trying to do is they're trying to leak Devontae. Devontae's going to tiptoe up there. See how the line's dotted, guys? Devontae's going to tiptoe up there, right? Like he's going to set a block, and then he's going to release out for the pass. You give Washington credit, man. They did a really good job defending this one. They were all over that. They saw that one coming. Like, great play design. Yeah, it's worth it to take the shot here and there, but those don't always work out. That's the thing. And that's a situation where now we got 2 plays. The one play, the timing wasn't quite right. I don't think they got the spacing right there. And on the second play, they just didn't fool the defense. The defense wasn't fooled by it. They weren't fooled by the eye candy and the movement and stuff like that. And then, if I'm going to be honest, what happens on the next sequences of plays is what really results in us not getting points. Because we did move the ball here. What ended up happening was they missed a block on a run play. Okay, Mekhi Becton in particular, basically Washington brings down a safety to kind of come down and play in the box. And then Lane kicks out to take that safety out of the play. And then the guy that was kind of in a 4-eye, 5-ish kind of technique there, Becton should have probably really put him out and then climbed to the second level, but he immediately climbs to the second level, which leaves an immediate path into the backfield and gets Saquon hit for a loss there. Now we're behind the sticks again. Then you get a penalty, you're really behind the sticks, and then you just get a very improbable play that's just not likely to occur in any kind of like real sustenance there. You're just trying to gain back field position to get into a better spot for the kicker, right? And that's your third down play. So now you're trying to play for points on the first possession, get those 3 points. And Jake Elliott, who's normally solid, has been solid for most of his career. He wasn't solid there, man. He missed that kick. And that's the crap that's happening to this Eagles offense at times. Like, some of it is, it's growth in the system that has to occur. It's not fully there yet. The growth is not fully there. They're still merging together some of the remnants of what is the Erhardt-Perkins stuff that they did with Sirianni and, they did with Shane Steichen and Kevin Patullo that gets kind of mixed in with that spread offense stuff that we do. Well, now they're trying to impose some of that spread West Coast stuff, right? They want to speed Jalen up a little bit. They want to get a little bit more quick game there, right? They're trying to implement these things. And there's a lot beneath the surface, and I've already talked about this once before, guys. The thing that happens behind the surface is that in the Erhardt-Perkins, quarterback has a lot of freaking autonomy at the line of scrimmage. The quarterback, he very much drives the offense in Erhardt-Perkins. Most quarterbacks like that. Think about some of the arguments. I'm not saying this was the main cause of the split between Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson, but Doug's a West Coast guy by roots, right? But he had Frank Reich in, who Frank Reich became, he came out of the K-gun, in Buffalo when he was a player. But Frank had kind of evolved and come down the chain where he got exposed to like the Coryell systems and Erhardt-Perkins. So he got more into the digit based and like the simplified kind of language stuff, and then giving and devolving some of that power to the quarterback. And then when Doug kind of started taking it back in 2020 a little bit because Carson wasn't playing well, they immediately hit heads here. I do think that there are times where they are trying to go coordinator driven to get Jalen Hurts into a rhythm. I think that's the goal, is to get Jalen into a rhythm. Once Jalen's into a rhythm, then you can kind of give him, you can go hurry up and you can do those things to where now it's clearly in the hands of the quarterback, right? You got him into a rhythm. He's feeling it. Now you can kind of devolve some of that power to Jalen and let Jalen do his thing. But the slow starts are kind of killing our ability to do that sometimes, to be quite honest. That's part of the problem that's going on here, guys, is that we just got to get timing right? The penalties, the stupid, foolish penalties, right? The lack of execution at times. Guys dropping passes when they shouldn't drop them. It happens. We got good receivers. I'm not going to cook our receivers, but there are some inopportune, drops at times that kill drives, right? The holding calls, the illegal man downfield calls, all those things just kind of, they're drive killers, to be quite honest. They stall your drive. They kill your drive. I think the capacity to put up a ton of points even early in games is there. And I wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't happen by the end of the year if we're not cooking on those opening possessions and first quarters. But it's not there right now because of multi-factors, right? Trying to get this offense between the coordinator and the quarterback, right? Trying to get the language down for the offense, because it does seem, I can't say 100%, guys, I'm not in the meeting room, but it does seem like linguistically there is a little change to the play calls here. And then also just execution. We're just lacking in the execution, the details. All right, y'all. If you like this type of content, hey, man, I would love to add you to the Cerebral Football community. I just need you to click up here to do that. And also, YouTube is telling me that if you want more cerebral coverage, if you want to learn more about the game and actually have someone break it down to you and show you the concepts and explain the concepts, you came to the right channel. And YouTube says check this video out right here. All right, y'all. Peace. I'm out of here.